Okay, I think we can start. Hello and welcome everyone to this webinar about the Commission's consultation for its new annual Rule of Law report. I'm very happy that so many of you have joined the webinar and that we have Commissioner Reynders here with us today to give some first-hand information about the report and the consultation. I think that many of you might already know me from the Anti-Corruption Intergroup. For those of you who don't, my name is Freund. I'm a member of the European Parliament for the Greens, and I actually do come from civil society myself. I worked for Transparency International for the last 5 years before I got elected. So I thought it would be useful to give stakeholders, civil society, to the opportunity to ask Mr. Reynders questions about the consultation and to provide a platform for where we can discuss and coordinate a bit our work around that. Some organizational information before we start. We have the webinar basically in 2 parts. During the first one, Mr. Reynders will start with a brief presentation of the report, what the Commission is planning and how you all can contribute to that consultation. There will also be time, of course, for you to ask questions. During the second part, after 45 minutes, Mr. Reynders will leave and we will then have some time to exchange among us and see a bit who is aiming to provide what input to the consultation. At the moment, you are all muted and your cameras are switched off. If you would like to ask any questions, then please do so over the questions menu in writing and raise your hand, and we will then call upon you when we go into the questions part. We'll try to do as many questions as possible. If we do not manage all the questions during this part, we will keep the written record, share that with the Commission, and maybe some of the questions can then also be answered in writing after that webinar. Thanks so much, Mr. Reynders, for being here, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Thank you for your invitation, and good afternoon to everyone. Well, it's a pleasure to have the opportunity to discuss with you in a difficult period of time. We have very specific circumstances for the moment, and which are a challenge for us all. But in this situation of emergency, I must say that our fundamental rights and fundamental values, including, of course, the rule of law, democracy, and fundamental rights in general, are more important than ever. And I want to insist on the fact that the Commission remains committed to promote and uphold them. In particular, despite the current situation, our work on the preparation of the annual rule of law report is progressing well. The civil society have a role to play. The civil society organizations have an important role in this process, and I'm glad to have this opportunity to update you on our work on this important initiative and to further discuss your contribution to this process. As you know, the Rule of Law report is one of the major initiatives of the Commission's work program for 2020. I'm determined to take this initiative forward and make it a success. It will be sometimes difficult due to the actual situation in the crisis, but we try to be strict on the capacity to go to the end for a presentation in the Commission in September. And it will be challenging, of course, but we try to work with all the partners to raise this goal. And the Rule of Law report will provide a synthesis of significant developments in member states, both positive and negative, within, in fact, 4 areas: justice system, and in particular, the independence, quality, and efficiency. It's the first condition to have a rule of law. If you have a society managed by law, you need, of course, to have the capacity to go to an independent and qualified and efficient judge to try to have a correct application of the law. The anti-corruption framework, I know that it was possible to have a first report some years ago, but now we will have every year such a rule of law report with, as a second part of the report, the anti-corruption framework. Third, certain issues related to media pluralism, and then other institutional issues related to the checks and balances. And the standards used for the assessment will be those stemming from EU law, the treaties, first of all, but also the case law of the Court of Justice and of the Open Court of Human Rights, as well as standards coming from the Council of Europe. For example, in different ways, there are some decisions of the Committee of Ministers of the Council of Europe, and we will take those decisions into account in our presentation. As Justice Commissioner, I'm leading and coordinating the Commission work on this initiative. And let me say a bit more on the latest step in the preparation of the report. In order to ensure a close involvement of the Member States, a network of national contact points on the rule of law has been established and held a constructive first meeting on 14 February 2020. At this first meeting, the draft methodology for preparing the report and the type of input that Member States can provide have been discussed. The Commission then received written comments from the contact points on the FGET's methodology and the input requests to Member States, which we have carefully considered. On this basis, we have now invited the national contact points to provide substantive input by the 4th of May. This will be following by country visits, or if it's not possible, video conferences, depending on the COVID-19 situation. The input received from Member States will be published on the Commission's website, where Member States agree. So it's a choice of the Member States to be transparent or not in their communication and their participation in the preparation of the report. In addition to the input from Member States, the Commission will rely on a diversity of relevant sources, including contributions from stakeholders. I will say more about this in a moment. As regards timing, the Commission's objective remains, I said, to publish the report in September. There is, of course, some certainty due to the COVID-19 crisis, but we will do our best to deliver. Once the report is adopted and published, we need to discuss as broadly as possible what is the situation of the rule of law, both at the level of the EU and at the level of Member States. To achieve this, the Commission will work closely with the European Parliament and the Council. So after the adoption in September in the Commission, we'll have a first discussion in the General Affairs Council during the German presidency, maybe in October or in November, and also in the Parliament. I've tried to give correct information to the Libe Committee in the Parliament and to the General Affairs Council about the preparatory works on the report. In addition, and it's very important, I'm keen to see a broad debate also at national level. For instance, in national parliament or at events organized by stakeholders, by NGOs and other organizations in the civil society. The idea is to start a cycle and a discourse to jointly address problems in a cooperative manner and benefit from each other's experience and best practices. So the goal is, in fact, to have a culture of rule of law and to not just have a new report in the library, but to organize a real debate also at the national level. It's the best way to have an evolution and a promotion of the rule of law in all the Member States, is to be able to discuss at the national level. About the role of the stakeholders, let me now come to the role of the civil society organizations and other stakeholders in the rule of law mechanism. I have always been vocal on this. You have a key role to play. I want to highlight 3 opportunities for you to become involved. First, you now have the possibility to contribute through a targeted consultation, which was opened on the Commission's website on the 24th March. The deadline for contribution is the 4th of May, the same deadline as for Member States. I would like to invite you to make good use of this opportunity. Stakeholders' input is an important element for the preparation of the report. We have traditional stakeholders like the Council of Europe with the Venice Commission or the Greco about corruption. We have also the Fundamental Rights Agency in Vienna, but we are open to receive contributions from many other stakeholders, international organizations or national organizations more involved in the protection of the rule of law, fundamental rights, or more concerned by the democratic process. Stakeholders are able to provide input both on horizontal development concerning several or all EU member states, as well as on developments in individual member states concerning the 4 pillars covered by the report. The topics and subtopics in the consultation follow the same structure as the input that we are asking member states to provide, and it's on the website of the Commission. These contributions will be necessary to help the Commission to acquire an understanding of the situation of the rule of law on the ground. Let me add that this consultation will be carried in a transparent manner, and the inputs received by stakeholders will be published on the Commission's website for those stakeholders who agree to such publication. This is the same approach as for member states' input. There will be a second opportunity for you to contribute to the rule of law mechanism, while the modalities for the country visit still need to be determined in line of the current circumstances. They will provide an occasion to meet national stakeholders and to ask more targeted questions based on the input we receive from member states and through the stakeholder consultation. This brings me, last but not least, to the third opportunity for you to be involved. Once the report is published, it will be essential to encourage national governments and parliaments to launch a wide political debate on the findings of the report, not just at European, but also at national level. And civil society organizations can play an important role to help trigger this debate, which can also provide an opportunity to promote best practices. Let me finally underline that the discussions on the new preventive mechanism should not divert our attention from the pressing rule of law challenges in some member states. The Commission will continue to react and use all the means at its disposal to uphold the rule of law in the Union. And we have organized the process about an infringement proceeding against the disciplinary procedure against judges in Poland at the beginning of this year. We have asked interim measures, and we have seen that the Court of Justice have decided to ask to suspend all the disciplinary procedure against judges in Poland, at least at the level of the extraordinary chamber of the Supreme Court. So if it's needed, we'll continue to use such a tool. We have a toolbox about the rule of law. And to conclude, allow me to repeat that I highly value the contribution of civil organizations for upholding the rule of law. Your contribution is much needed. I count on your continued support. And of course, it's the case about the first annual report that we will prepare this year till the adoption in September. But it's also the case for the actual situation, because you know that we have also some concern about the rule of law and the fundamental rights and the democracy during the crisis time that we are living in. And we have organized on my proposal in the Commission since 3 weeks now, 2 monitorings, one about the emergency measures, what are the risks for the rule of law and the fundamental rights of the emergency measures taken in many member states. 22 member states at least have decided to have a state of urgency or a state of danger or specific relations between the parliament and the government to give more room for maneuver to the government. And we have expressed that we have some concern first, maybe in Hungary about the actual situation, but we are monitoring the situation in all the member states. And the second monitoring is about the data protection, because there are also some intentions to use digital technologies to fight against the crisis and the virus, but we need to be in full compliance with the GDPR, and we try also to monitor the situation on that. But that is more for the actual situation. I'm, of course, very interested to know what are the possible contributions from the civil society for the moment in the actual crisis, but also, again, for the preparation of the annual report. Thank you for such an opportunity to explain to you what are the possibilities to take part in the process, and I'm very open to answer to your question and to receive your remarks or recommendations.
Thank you very much. The first question is technical. Could you clarify what a stakeholder is? Does it have to be an organization? Is it political party? Is it an individual? Who can actually participate and submit answers to the consultation?
In my mind, it's very open. We have tried to work first, I said, with the member states, because we need to describe the situation in all the member states and to give the opportunity to the member states to react on this. But we have also sent some letters to traditional stakeholders. I said Council of Europe or Fundamental Rights Agency and others. But for the rest, we are very open. It's better, of course, to work with organizations, NGOs, and specific organizations at the national level, but it's also possible for individuals to try to take part in the process. Of course, I said it's easier to work with organizations because we need to manage also the integration of many remarks in the preparation of the report. And with individual reactions, it's more difficult to do that with organizations. But again, we try to work with organizations at the European level, national organizations, and many partners from the civil society. But if there are some individual reaction, it's also fine. We have had some discussions with think tanks also about the way to take part, and all the different chapters are described on the website of the Commission.
Very good. Then I have two more also technical questions from Linda. The first one is, when and how will civil society be informed as regards the possibility to be involved in these country visits? And will the Commission actually support civil society in encouraging, triggering the political debate on the report's findings at national level? Will there, for example, be financial support to civil society for that?
There are three parts in the possible timing. So now it's possible to take part in the consultation. That's the first way to be involved in the process. That's till the 4th of May, and we have prolonged from 2 weeks the delay due to the actual circumstances, but we try to be strict on the capacity to be on time for September. After the beginning of May, we'll start the country visits. Of course, if it's with real physical country visits, it will be quite easy to organize different discussions with the stakeholders who take the opportunity to take part in the consultation, and will invite the different participants to a meeting during the country visit. If it's impossible to organize the country visit on the ground, we will organize video conferences in the same way. So we try to open the door for a participation in a meeting by video to all the different organizations who have taken the opportunity to take part in the consultation. It's the best way. So if you take part in the consultation, you will be in the country visit. If some organization doesn't take part in the country visit, but doesn't take part in the consultation, but want to take part in the country visit, will open the door also to take part in a video conference or in a physical meeting in the country. And the third phase, after September, if it's possible to maintain the timing and the decision in the Commission in September, we'll go to the Geneva Council and to the European Parliament, of course, to have a first debate. But then I said we try to work at the national level. In some member states, it will be maybe an initiative of the national parliament or the regional parliament sometimes to organize a debate, and we'll insist to invite the stakeholders. If, I don't know, but if it's not so easy to organize a debate at the national level in the parliament, we will ask to the different participants in the consultation and the country visit to organize themselves with the Commission a real debate on the report. And of course, I have said it's the first report, but we'll have a report every year. So the real rendezvous, it's the discussion on the report at the European level and in the member state. And of course, with the different stakeholders, if you take part in the consultation, it will be easier for us to take into account of your participation in the country visit, and then to ask to you to take part also in the discussions at the national level. But no, we are very open to do that, because again, I repeat, it's not just to have a report, it's more to organize a real debate about the rule of law, like it was possible to organize a debate about the budget and the structural reforms after many years in the last 2 decades. Now we need to start a real debate at the national level, like on the European level of the values.
Perfect.
And maybe just Daniel, if I may, just one word
Yeah.
to don't forget about the financial support. It's also possible because we have in our programs the capacity to finance some organizations. So we will see if it's needed to launch a specific request for a different kind of support, or if we have the capacity just to send a message to the different stakeholders. But we are also at work since some years with support for organizations promoting and defending the rule of law in member states, but there are some possibilities to receive a financial support. And certainly, if we organize a debate after the publication of the report, we'll take part in the financing of the cost of those organizations.
Perfect. So now questions really start pouring in. We'll still try to do them one by one, as many as possible. The next one that I have comes from Nora, who is asking, so what exactly should be the scope of the submissions in terms of the time period covered? Should they cover also developments that have happened before 2019, if they're necessary to explain the rule of law situation as it stands in 2019, or should the reports focus on the situation just solely on and what happened in 2019? Are they allowed to include significant developments from 2020 if they're closely related to the issues discussed? And if it's clearly indicated that a given development took place in 2020? Maybe that for a first question.
Of course, we are in the preparation of the report, but the first goal is to have a description, I will say, of the rules, because we are speaking about the rule of law. So what are the rules? And I said in my introductory remarks, we'll use the treaties, the case law from the two courts of Luxembourg and Strasbourg to describe the rules, and then to describe the national situation in the different fields. And of course, in the description of the situation, it will be with the actual situation, taken into account the reforms of the last years, and I don't know how long, but since the beginning of the process. But we describe the actual situation with a risk-based analysis, more focus on the evolutions in 19 and maybe also the evolution in 20 because of the actual situation that we are living in. And of course, the two monitorings that we are managing for the moment about the emergency measures and the data protection are also a part of the possible discussion. But mainly, it's a description of the situation before 2019, I would say, and then all the recent evolutions in 19 and beginning of 20, that will be the main part of the report. And of course, if there are some discussions about reforms before 19, it's in the description, they are in the description of the actual situation. That's the real goal of the report, because we will have an evolution year after year. So of course, in the next years, the report will be more targeted to the evolution in the previous year. Just in 2021, it will be on 20 and the beginning of 21 and so on, year after year, like for the report in the European semester on the structural reforms, on the budgetary situation and different other elements. It will be the same, but in the description of the situation, of course, we'll take into account the reforms of the previous years.
And is it possible on those topics that organizations think that should have been included in the report but are not so far, such as the right to vote, minority rights, academic freedoms, for example, is it possible to provide input on those, as there does not seem to be a question on sort of any other business, let's say? And to what extent should NGO submissions still take into account the existing reports, opinions, and so on of international stakeholders also in the NGO reports?
So we'll try to take on board many different sources, and of course there are many documents coming from international organizations, and maybe in the description of the rules, like I said, so the rule of law is based on the law. So what are the main rules? We will take on board the different decisions or the different documents from different international organizations. But more than that, of course, I don't want to fix some limits to the contributions. I'm very open to receive contributions on many different issues. But I've said will start in the first report on 4 issues. And so we try to stick to those 4 issues. I received many questions, and you mentioned that also, about the minority rights. But we will have also this year a new strategy on the Charter, fundamental rights, and next year it will be the first new report on the Charter. We have also a democracy action plan, and we'll have a report on democracy. So I'm sure that we'll have different processes, and the rule of law is more dedicated to the 4 issues that I've mentioned. If you are speaking more about individual rights, it will be in the Charter and in the report on the Charter. In my mind, next year, due to the fact that we will have the first report, the first new report on the Charter, it will be possible maybe in the Geneva Council, but also in the Parliament and at the national level, to join the different elements and to discuss not only the annual report on the rule of law, but the report on the Charter for Fundamental Rights and the democracy, the action plan. And I know that there are many discussions. Till my hearing in the Parliament in October, I receive all the time the same question: why not a broader scope? But there are 2 reasons. First, we need to start, and we need to start with some key points about the rule of law. And second, there are other instruments to discuss about fundamental rights at the individual level and to discuss about the democratic process. But of course, at the end, it will be possible maybe for the 3 institutions at the European level to discuss all together and to have a real debate on rule of law, fundamental rights, and democracy. But it's the reason why we are working now on those 4 chapters. And of course, we need to discuss about the minority rights, about other kind of issues, but maybe more in the new strategy on the Charter.
Great. Jessica is asking if the country visits will be organized only in the member states with worrying results, or or all member states, or how do you select the country visits?
No, we want to organize country visit in all the member states, like we have a group of contact person in all the member states also. It's the only one way to try to have an equal treatment of all the member states. And it's the new tool that we want to have, because I repeat, it's an additional one. So we are continuing and will continue to work with the infringement proceedings, with Article 7, with other kind of tools. I'm hoping that we will have in the near future a new tool with the conditionality in the way to organize the MFF, so conditionality between the funding and the rule of law in the member states. But here it's a report on all the member states. So every year we'll have a consultation of the member states through the contact networks, then a country visit in all the member states, and then of course the discussions at the national level after the EU institutions. But it's true that we will go deeper in those member states where there are some concern expressed, to give an example, by the decision to launch the Article 7 procedure, about Poland by the Commission, about Hungary by the Parliament. That's true that we have said, in the former Commission expressed that in the communication of July last year, that it will be deeper on those countries where there are already some concern than about the others. But we will organize country visit in all the member states, and we'll take the time to give some elements in the report on all the member states. We need to have an equal treatment. Without that, we'll have many criticism, of course, if we are just focusing on some. But I want to insist on the fact that we will have maybe some breaches, some possible breach to the rule of law in many member states. It's logical. You have some, like for the fundamental rights, there are some concern in some different fields. But there's a huge difference between some possible breaches and a real dialogue to correct that, and then a sort of systemic breach to the rule of law. Article 7, it's more in line with the systemic breach. Maybe the conditionality, if it's possible, about the funding, it will be the same. In the report, the real goal is to try to correct the situation in all the member states. Of course, if there are more concern in one or another, we'll go deeper, and it will be made needed to use other tools like Article 7 or infringement proceedings.
Helen from Access Info is asking if you could consider making all the submissions to the consultation public, also those from governments and other actors.
Well, it's a difficult choice, so we have decided to say we want to receive the most important, the most comprehensive reactions from the member states and from the stakeholders. And so in the first exercise, we'll see later, first exercise, we let the choice to the member states and to the stakeholders to agree or not about the publication. But I want to repeat, it's just a contribution to the report, because the final report will be adopted in September, normally in the Commission, and it will be a report from the Commission. So we will express the views of the Commission about all the different elements on the basis of the different contributions. But I fully understand that it's maybe better to have a more transparent process. But if we want to receive for the first report all the possible remarks from the member states first, and maybe for some stakeholders, it's better to let the choice and to say, we will take into account your contribution, but we will publish only if you agree. After the first exercise, we will see if it's needed to change that or not. Of course, there are two possibilities, but if you express the view that we need to publish all, we take the risk to don't have maybe a real sincere contribution from all the participants. And for the first exercise, it was a choice. We have decided with all the member states to say, you may be sure that it will be just public if you agree for your contribution. Again, the report of the Commission will be public, and it will be a report from the Commission. It will be the same for the stakeholders. We'll see. Maybe all the stakeholders and the NGOs and all the participants will insist on the publication from themselves. From the member states, we have made such a choice from the beginning. And again, we are very open to see if it's needed to stay with that for the next report, or it would be better to organize a publication of all.
Great. Next, I'm going to give the floor to Ottmar Lahodinsky, who is the president of the Association of European Journalists. I'm unmuting him now. Ottmar, can you?
Yes. Hello from Vienna. Dear I have two questions about the actual situation about Corona. How will you ensure, because this has to be done quickly, how will you ensure that all these emergency laws are really proportionate, and then that they will end as soon as the Corona situation is over? And the second question about Corona is, how will you ensure media freedom throughout the European Union? One concrete example, for instance, Austria gives a state aid to some publishers, and which is a bit strange. They give state aid according to the number of printed copies, which of course is much in favor of all the big tabloids and not the so-called quality papers. And then I have the first question, maybe I put it now. How, because you talked about Hungary and Poland, how will you ensure that these sanctions will actually work with these countries? Because so far in Article 7, more or less, if one country helps another country, the one country which is criticized, then there are no sanctions at all. So thank you very much.
Yes, there are many different elements, Ottmar. And
yes,
first of all, is the reason why I've asked to the Commission 3 weeks ago now to start a monitoring. I said 2 on data protection, but the first one on the emergency measures. And I've had the opportunity to explain to the Commission the first result of the monitoring organized by the DG Justice. And I want to say it's a huge work, not only on the different laws in at least 22 member states having a state of emergency or a state of danger, like in Hungary, or another kind of process. But now we try to monitor, and we monitor all the different measures taken in application of the law. And that's more important, because to be very open about the laws, we didn't see a real argument to go to the court and to start an infringement proceeding in one of another country. Of course, there are some concerns. I've expressed the views that about Hungary, to give example, The fact that we don't have a time limit about the state of danger, it's a first concern. The fact that we have an incrimination, new incrimination for the dissemination of fake news during the pandemic, it's also a concern. But we need to monitor the application of it. And so the media freedom will be a part of it. Is it possible to see that there's a real freedom for the media, for the press, but also freedom of speech or expression? We have seen in the last hours some demonstrations in Bulgaria about declarations from one doctor, if I'm well informed, about the fact that there are a lack of medicine in the country, and well, it's a freedom of expression to say that, and not fake news. And so we have the same discussion in many member states. So I've seen that it was possible for many people to react on a possible prosecution on it. It's the same. We will monitor the situation and see what kind of investigations, to give an example, about such a new incrimination in Hungary. About the state aids, we have give more flexibility, of course, to the member states to provide state aids during the crisis. But I take note of your remarks. Of course, we need also to monitor that it's in a balanced way, that it's organized. And in the report on the rule of law, we'll discuss on the media pluralism. Of course, if you have an intervention of the public authorities just for one part of the media, it's become to be problematic. But I don't want to say more. I don't know, to be honest, the situation in Austria, like you mentioned in the last weeks about the state aid, but we need to monitor that, of course. The public authorities must have a fair behavior about the intervention in the media. So, of course, if there are some state aids, we need to take care about the fact that it's organized on a normal and objective basis, and not for some and not the others. About Hungary and Poland, that's the difficulty that we are facing about the Article 7. You know that it's very important to continue the work on Article 7. I've asked to the Croatian presidency to be open to put on the agenda a state of play or hearings, or we will see about Article 7 to continue the work, because it's a real political pressure, and there are sometimes new elements like in the emergency measures, but the procedure is very difficult. It was a decision at the time of the Council, it was in Nice, I'm sure, to decide about the unanimity or qualified majority to progress from one step to another one. And it's true that with a minority, it's possible to block the system. It's the reason why, in the proposal of the Commission about the conditionality for the funding in the MFF, the Commission has proposed to use the reverse qualified majority. So, like in the open semester, to don't have the capacity to block with a minority, but if you want to change the process, if you want to change the position of the Commission, to be concrete about some recommendations, you need to find a qualified majority in the Council. It's more difficult, of course, than just to find a minority. And is the reason why we are discussing on it. Maybe in the conference of the future of Europe, it will be a part of the discussion. Or it will be possible to change maybe the process also on Article 7, to say that for such a kind of discussion, we need to have a possibility to work also with the reverse qualified majority and not with the actual system. But that's the limits of the exercise for the moment. And I'm sure that with the actual crisis, we will see a real request for more solidarity among the member states. And you have maybe followed the last discussions at the Eurogroup level for the financial support. But if you want to organize solidarity, you need to be sure that you are solidar with member states having a full respect of the rule of law, fundamental rights, and democracy. And there is maybe a possible link. But it's true that for the moment, the rules are very difficult to apply if you need to reach unanimity or qualified majority. And again, it's the reason why we insist on the reverse qualified majority for the new possible conditionality in the funding.
The next question I have is from Nick from Transparency International, who is asking about the anti-corruption chapter. You mentioned in your introduction already the previous anti-corruption report by the Commission, which he says was met with fierce pushback by the member states, and then the report was, of course, abandoned after the first publication. So, given the need to get this process right, what lessons learned have been drawn from the anti-corruption report? and how will you make sure that they are addressed now as part of this rule of law report?
Well, there are two elements. First of all, it's a part of the new report. I've said I agree on this in the Commission, but also with the member states, because now there is a consultation on the 4 chapters, and the second one I said is the corruption framework. But the two main elements are, first, we will work with an annual report. So it's a huge difference with the previous report. Here we will have every year a report on those issues. So next year, we'll make a new report with the positive and the negative evolutions in comparison with the report of 2020. So it will be an ongoing process and not just one report without any maybe consequences. The second element is the real intention to go to the national parliaments and the national civil society to discuss about the content of the report. And again, just to try to install a real culture about the rule of law in general, but about the independence of judiciary, the fight against corruption, the media pluralism, and so on. Because at the end, it's possible to have a positive evolution in one member state or in a country in the world only if you have a solid capacity to install a real debate in the country about the situation. I don't want to make too many references, but if you look to the situation in Malta in the last months, you have seen many discussions about the rule of law and independence of judiciary, some reforms, and we will continue to work with the new government in Malta to see if it's possible to make some reform. Of course, it was unfortunately due to the murder of a journalist, but it was also due that after that, we have seen some reactions in the civil society in Malta. It's not just from Brussels or from the European institution, it's possible to change the way to move on it. And so on the issue of the fight against corruption, we will have two new elements. The first one is an annual report, so we'll have every year a report on this with positive and negative evolutions. And then we'll try, maybe with your support, with your organization, to organize a real debate at the national level.
Maybe that then for the last question, if we can take one last one. Precisely that we have a number of people asking, stirring some national debate is nice, but particularly in those countries where probably the findings will be most difficult, it seems unlikely that there will be a constructive national debate on these issues or any actual hope for meaningful reform. So what else is there in the toolbox for I mean, we have also seen in a number of member states that there is real rule of law issues for years. So what other than reporting about it, what are the concrete actions?
So first of all, I said we will have a debate at the European level, of course, in the Commission to adopt the report, in the Council and in the Parliament. I've said to different members of the European Parliament that we'll ask to the members of the European Parliament to help us also to organize something at the national level. But if we have some difficulties, to be very concrete, in the organization of a national debate in the Parliament, of course, we will try to work with the civil society. And it's the reason why I said we are also in contact with think tanks, with NGOs and with others, to be sure that if we don't have the opportunity to organize a real debate in the political bodies and Parliament, to be concrete, at the national level, we'll have the opportunity to do something else. And it's also the reason why we have the capacity to finance some organizations to take part in such a process. Because, of course, we are knowing that it will be sometimes maybe more difficult in some member states to organize a debate on the rule of law than in others. But it's the reason why, since the beginning, I've said we will go to the national level, but not only in the national parliament or regional parliaments in some countries, but also through the other channels that we have, like universities, think tank, NGOs, and others. And it's the only one way. Of course, through the media, it's also possible, but I know that in some member states, it's more difficult to reach the people through the media. So we need to try to install, I said, a culture of the rule of law through the different channels. And if it's needed, of course, we'll try to organize that with the civil society.
Thank you so much. We are going to free you now. As I said in the beginning, I hope it's okay if the remaining questions that we have received in writing, we will send them to you by email, and those people can still get a reply to their questions. Thank you so much. And as we said also before, we invite civil society, of course, to participate in the consultation. Thanks.
No, thank you very much for your invitation, and certainly also for your contribution. It's very important to receive contribution from many actors in the different consultations that we are launching. It's the same for the artificial intelligence. We are asking all the time to don't have just the usual suspect, but to have all the different kind of possible participants. And here I said it's very open. So if you have the possibility to send some contributions before the beginning of May, it will be fine. Thank you very much, and have a fruitful discussion now. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye. Okay, well then we go into the second part of this webinar. I thought it would be helpful maybe to discuss a bit among ourselves, among civil society, sort of what your thinking is on how to proceed on these issues, how to reply to the consultation, but maybe beyond that on how to continue to put pressure on the EU institutions to make progress on these issues. So I would simply invite you to raise your hands. Then I can immediately see you here in the application and can just let you speak. We have a first hand up by Georgiana, which I'm gonna unmute. To accept that I unmuted you, you're still self-muted, and then you can ask your question.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, I hope you...
If you can quickly say who you are, and then you can continue afterwards.
Yes, were you also able to see me?
No, unfortunately, we can't see you.
Okay, great. So my name is Georgiana Gheorghe. I'm the executive director of APADOR CH, a human rights organization in Romania. And my question was more to do with the framework of the information we are going to provide, because so it's starting January 2019 and also going into 2020. I know that these issues were discussed briefly in the presentation, but given that we as civil society organization have limited resources and there are a lot of questions we need to tackle, and also, you know, deal with whatever is happening at the national level, would it be wiser to concentrate on the rule of law issues before the crisis, the COVID the crisis started, or should we rather concentrate on what's happening right now? Because yeah, the situations are a bit different, and I'm afraid but just in terms of being, you know, as much as efficient and accurate as possible.
I mean, that's of course a question that ultimately the Commission has to answer. I would think, I mean, it depends a bit on whether you think that for when the report is actually published in September, if everything goes well, whether those measures will still be in place, right? So I think when the report actually comes out and is widely available publicly, then it should be the best basis for having a discussion on the situation on the ground, and for that the information needs to be accurate at that point in time. Otherwise, you can always, I mean, you can say these are the issues that we have under sort of, let's say, emergency, a state of emergency situation, and these are some additional issues under the state of emergency, but that might hopefully be resolved when the state of emergency is over in a couple of weeks or a month, whenever that time comes. Does that make sense?
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you.
Then next, Jessica. Muting you. Hi, Jessica. We cannot hear you at the moment. Okay, while we wait on Jessica, I'm gonna give the floor to Tom Gibson.
Hi, yeah, Tom Gibson, Committee to Protect Journalists. Just a couple of things. I mean, obviously a key thing that we want to sort of really press for is a sort of press freedom community, and we have had meetings, is really the question of recommendations. You know, it's fine having discussion at national level, but recommendations will allow for, if you like, a sort of sustainability around the process, and, you know, making it in a way a little bit more like the Universal Periodic Review within the United Nations. It will allow us to evaluate, if you like, the progress that member states are making. And then the second question is also down to the Council of Europe. I mean, as we're aware, you know, at least on press freedom, the Journalist Safety Platform allows for civil society organisations to post alerts and then get state responses, as does CPMSI, the Committee for Information Development and Society. Also provides very important, if you like, guidance and knowledge for member states in terms of their positive obligations that they can provide to better defending press freedom and supporting journalists. So I think really something that we do want to do is make sure that those recommendations are robust and that we can actually bring in, if you like, the scope for really formulating powerful recommendations. And then also, you know, how we can use the work that is already out there, and just to make sure that this is a process which is robust and has.
Now we lost Tom. I cannot.
No, well, that was the end of my point. Thanks.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I hope very much that the recommendations by the Commission in the report will be as concrete as possible. Otherwise, I don't see how there would be any kind of follow-up. And yes, I also hope that then in the successive reiterations that there be concrete follow-up on the recommendations that were made, and that we can track over time on who has fulfilled which of the recommendations. And then, of course, my hope is as well that the recommendations that are being made are then used to also sanction, or in other ways put pressure on member states to actually fulfill these recommendations. Otherwise, I mean, if this is just to sort of provide a historic record of how rule of law kept deteriorating in Europe, then I fear this will be a very sad exercise indeed. So I do hope that the Commission makes good use of the recommendations on these reports. I don't have any hands up anymore. Anyone who still wants to react or say anything, or even give an impression on what exactly their organization is going to do as part of this consultation? No. I'm going to give you the floor right away.
Hi there. Can you hear me all right now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hi, my name is Nora Novosadek. I'm from the Hungarian Helsinki Committee, and thank you so much for organizing this and giving also the possibility to ask questions. And so what we are trying to do in Hungary is to put together a report with other NGOs. So it will be basically a coalition of NGOs who will contribute to this process. And of course, this online format, you know, it's a bit difficult for us because this means that we have to still upload our responses individually. But our thinking is that irrespective of that, we will put out there a joint NGO report with hopefully 8 to 10 NGOs in Hungary, and to use that to create you know, an advocacy and awareness raising momentum around that. And what I wanted to ask the other participants and you, if you have any information on that, is precisely this. So are there any other such initiatives in other member states? So are there any initiatives to give like a kind of a holistic report of the situation? And yeah, thank you again for the opportunity. And just to mention one more thing, that we would be very grateful. I think I can say this also on behalf of others, to have some a similar discussion once the country visits are announced, or when the first rule of a report is published. So it would be great if we could, you know, kind of submit our opinions of how this process went, the first attempt at this process went. And I am not sure if there is any place for that, but we feel that would be important. Thank you.
Thanks, Nora. We will definitely keep this kind of dialogue open as the process evolves as well, not just now in the beginning. Thanks for that. Next, I'm going to give the floor to Helen. Helen, you still need to unmute yourself.
Yes. Okay,
Yeah,
now
we hear you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much indeed, Daniel, for organising this. I thought that was very useful, and it was good to have some reasonably frank answers, including to my question, which wasn't a yes, but he seemed to understand the transparency dimension. Couple of quick points in response to Nora's question. Haven't specifically organized it yet, but we did just do for Spain's Universal Periodic Review, we got together a coalition of Spanish NGOs. So I think it would be a really good idea to do something similar from the perspective of Spain, where I'm sitting right now, or standing actually. I try to walk on webinars. Then I think, obviously from Access Info, we'll raise some concerns about and have some suggestions about transparency and openness. And lastly, on the point of the current crisis, I think it's important to make comments about both. It's really good to hear that the Commission's been doing these mappings of the rules right now. I've been working on this with the Open Government Partnership. I'm on the steering committee of the Open Government Partnership, and there is a concern across Europe and also globally about monitoring what's being done right now to ensure that there is any measures which were introduced short term are rescinded after the height of the crisis has passed. And I do think it's going to be really important to be very vigilant of that, as well as some of the underlying rule of law issues that we already had ongoing. So I hope that we will be able to continue these discussions, Daniel, as part of the tracking of that as well. But thanks very much indeed for organizing this. It was really useful.
Thanks, Helen. And now I have Carlotta.
Yes, hello, Carlotta from Civil Society Europe. I just wanted to respond to the general question. So we asked about if there are initiatives to get different responses together. So in terms of our working group on civic space, we wanted to try to have a joint response using the material that is already there, because of course we have only basically 2 weeks to pull things together, and also the different resources that some of our members have done already to review the situation in different countries. This is one thing. For hopefully, if the process continues, the idea is then after this to launch a more in-depth process to really have a shadow report. And so it would be really useful to continue connections with different organizations, also to inform each other of the work that has been done. And the same also, we are trying to collect resources that different organizations are developing now in terms of highlighting issues in terms of the COVID crisis and the impact on civic space, especially. And yeah, and on that also working at positive measures that can support the sector, and the same would probably be highlighted in our response to the consultation more in general, because there is a specific question on the enabling civic framework.
Thanks, Carlotta. Next, I have Lucy. Lucy? I cannot hear anything. Okay. If there's no one else that would like to intervene at this point, I'd say we will obviously keep closely following these issues and the consultation, the report. We will continue to organize these exchanges with all of you and allow us to continue to provide input to hopefully make the rule of law report as much of a success as possible. So do stay tuned for that. As I said, we will forward all the written questions we still have to Commissioner Reynders, and we'll try to make sure to get answers for all of you on those. If you have anything else on this process, don't hesitate to send me or my team an email, and we'll try to sort that out. Thank you very much for being here today, and stay safe and healthy, and see you guys soon. Thanks.